Welcome back to Geeks and Grounds, a monthly game club and weekly podcast where we play games and brew good conversation together. I'm your host, Jenny Wyndham.
And I'm Joel Thomas.
And it's TV time.
The day that Jenny has been waiting for literal years has finally arrived.
It's true.
Not only getting to play, but to discuss in detail the Undertale.
You mean the Deltarune?
No, man, I was thinking about this pun for minutes, Jenny, and only to flub it.
Tomato, Undertale, Deltarune. You know, who's to say? Who's to say?
This is, this month's Joel didn't realize something basic about the game. This month, it's the title.
We always need one. We always need something.
We always need one.
In case you're new or if you need a refresher, I'm petting for video watchers. I have my arm out to the side because Rosie's here wanting some pets. But if you're new or you need a refresher, we focus on one game a month. We really like to savor it and dive into the themes and mechanics. And so this month we are playing Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4. We had a bit of a summer break, so July is a little bit of a shorter month for us. 2 weeks spending time, 1 week with Chapter 3, 1 week with Chapter 4. So this week, it's TV time. We're focusing on Chapter 3.
TV time, babies!
Yeah. If you haven't picked it up yet, it is not too late. You can grab the game on Steam or Nintendo Switch. I think maybe PlayStation X. I think it's across platforms, and you can join the conversation. And if you go to geeksandgrounds.com, that's where you can sign up for the newsletter, get the links to the podcast. If you're listening to it, I guess you're already here, and also links to the Discord to join the conversation. But first, before we hop into our deep dive of Chapter 3 in Deltarune, we'd like to make a pit stop to the pastry case. This is
I've been traveling the last couple of days. I've had so many blueberry muffins.
Yes. The pastry case is our grab bag of topics from the industry, from our lives, what we've been engaging with outside of the game of the month. And we've got some news that is a little bit older. It happened while we were on our break, but it was all big enough that it is worth a discussion. So buckle up because these are two big topics. The first is AI and the alters. So I have a couple articles here and I'll link them in the newsletter for tomorrow as well, or today if you're listening as this episode comes out. The first article that I wanted to cite is the alters developer confirms it used generative AI text and translations. It promises updates, and this is coming from Rebecca Valentine at IGN. Just to summarize what happened, The Alters is a indie game developed and published by 11-Bit Studios, and players spotted what appeared to be text generated by AI in the game, particularly on a screen in the command center, and it included the prompt that someone had used for like the generative text. And so that was how players were able to see what was going on. Mm-hmm. And in the English language version, that's what was reported. But then more reports came from Brazilian players where the text translations seemed very, very wrong, similar with Korean players. And they eventually had to respond to that because turns out when players asked, is this true? Have you been using AI? They did say yes. They have a full response, but before we read that, I wanted to get your initial gut thoughts, Joel, on sort of seeing this unravel.
It's just so frustrating. Like, I at first, like, as like these games have been talking about, like, oh, we just use it as some of our like initial collateral while we were building out the more full materials. You might think like, okay, maybe, but when you think about it, it's like, well, if it really doesn't matter, then just throw a Doodle Bob SpongeBob cartoon image in there and replace it with the asset that you're eventually going to actually do yourself.
Right.
Use your, like, I think you mentioned this before we hopped on, like, use your lorem ipsum text mm-hmm. and then replace it with real text later. Like, yeah, if it really doesn't matter, then it really doesn't matter. Otherwise, like, there's no way that it isn't somehow influencing the creation process for what's happening here. Mm-hmm. And for something that, like, we have gone to the mats for years arguing is an artistic endeavor, a true form of media and storytelling, to see it get lost in the trash of generative AI, it's just infuriating.
Yeah, I felt the same. And, I will say, because I have covered the alters before, I was super excited to play the alters. I've been looking forward to this game for quite some time. And I will say one of the things that frustrated me the most was the fact that this wasn't an element disclosed on Steam. For folks who don't know, Steam has a section where if developers use AI or generative AI and as part of their process, they're supposed to disclose when and how it was used. And at the times I looked at the Steam page, there was no mention of this, which is why I was also just like, all right, this doesn't have an AI, so I'm choosing to cover this because I think that this is not going to be used a technology or tool that I am not as into. So that for me was an additional part, a little bit of the sting in this kind of backlash that was also happening among the fans, where it's like, not only was this used, but mostly it's like you didn't disclose this, so it feels there's an extra layer there that doesn't feel great. I did want
you're being misled.
Yeah, I did want to read their response just so that we can hear what they have to say. It's a very, very long one, so I won't read the entire thing. But they said, during production, an AI-generated text for a graphic asset, which was meant as a piece of background texture, was used by one of our designers as a placeholder. This was never intended to be part of the final release. Unfortunately, due to an internal oversight, the single placeholder text was mistakenly left in the game. We have since conducted a thorough review and confirmed this was an isolated case, and the asset in question is being updated. And they included a screenshot for transparency, and said, while we do not want to downplay the situation, we also want to clearly show its limited impact on your gaming experience. In addition to that, a few licensed movies that the alters can watch in the social area of the base were added at the final stage of development. While these were externally produced, our team was not involved in the creative process, and those required additional last-minute translations. Due to extreme time constraints, we chose to not involve our translation partners and had these videos localized using AI to have them ready at launch. It was always our intention to involve our trusted translations agencies after release as a part of our localization hotfix to ensure these texts would be handled with the same care and quality as the rest of the game. That process is now underway and updated translations are being implemented. And then I'll just skip to the last paragraph. As AI tools evolve, they present new challenges and opportunities in game development. We are actively adapting our internal processes to meet this reality, but above all, we remain committed to transparency in how we make our games. We appreciate your understanding and continued support as we work towards that goal.
I'll ask you the question that you asked me before we hopped on today, which is, when they make a statement like this after they've been caught and say, like, it was always the plan to, like, fix these translations with people that are paid translators.
Right.
How do you trust that? Like, what is your equation for that, Jenny?
I think that's what is frustrating to me, is that it is becoming increasingly difficult to maintain that sense of, I think, honesty and sort of good faith, like, okay, I'm just going to believe you. It's becoming increasingly difficult. And I'm not trying to single like 11-bit out, because this isn't the only studio or the only time it's happened. It's this cumulative effect of constantly seeing AI images or text being used within games, getting these messages of like, oh, we got caught, instead of, oh, hey, we were upfront with you about its usage. And now having to, as a consumer who is invested in terms of not wanting to engage with this, constantly now feeling like I have to do this detective level work to figure out if my game is okay to play. Like, if I can engage with this game and feel okay about it. And I think that degradation and erosion of that implicit trust that I have that I can just jump into a game and be excited about it is really sad. I feel really sad about that. And so it's really challenging, because I know, especially in the tech world, a lot of people are more open and excited about this idea of AI and the potential opportunities that it can present. But at the same time, like I think it is doing much more harm than good at this point. And I think the fact that they weren't as transparent with it and their use of it, even in the prototyping phase, shows that they may understand that players don't want this. So that's another element that I see that's frustrating.
That's really good. I hadn't even thought about that layer. Like, if it was truly not a big deal that you were using this, you would have been transparent about it from the beginning. But it's a bad, the backlash you would get.
Yeah, I think that's the tough part is if you're going to use it, like stand 10 toes down and say you're using it, even in a prototyping phase, and let people make the judgments that they want to, make the calls that they want to, if you really believe that this is something you should use. I wanted to shout out as well, I think it was in the, let's see, it was in a Eurogamer article titled "Fans Slam the Alters After Discovering Evidence of Undisclosed Gen AI in Images, Text, and Translation" by Vicky Blake. What I thought was really interesting is this article actually interviewed some of the translators. I think one in particular, the Korean translator, as well as maybe the Brazilian translator, and how they felt sort of taken aback and they felt that whiplash because they had done the translation for the Korean version of the game, but there's this one element that's AI and their work is now kind of thrown out, because of this one piece that was taken to Chat GPT to be translated. And so I think about the ripple effects of this one translator now whose like entire work is being called into question through no fault of his own. Because
if he had that like on their resume or something, like, oh, I was a part of Alters, and then someone's like, oh, let me see what Alters is, and they look it up, and the first thing they see is like AI used in translation. Wow, I had not thought about that.
And so it's like this person who translated the majority of this Korean version, he talks about how, okay, well, someone who just decided to throw in a Chat GPT prompt, now it looks like maybe he potentially, if you didn't know his specific role, and if also, again, it brings to mind trust. Like now if he's in an interview, this gets brought up. Will they trust that he wasn't a part of this? There's just so many different tiny things that butterfly effect out from that simple act of just being like, let's throw it into Chat GPT or just use this AI generated image. It's really frustrating.
It's infuriating. I mean, I had this like personal experience. I was trying to watch this new anime, I think it's called like Lord of Mysteries, and I watched the first 2 episodes. They like dropped simultaneously and I was like really enjoying it, but I was like, I'm really struggling to understand what is happening. The next day, AI used in the English translation on Crunchyroll, and they got such a negative pushback that they went back and had a person translate it and change the subtitles for the English text for the first episode. They like re-released them, but it's just like it is so pervasive already and not good. Like this is what keeps like it's just the perfect evidence of how much like really back on my soapbox, back on my bullshit, like how much corporations are willing to sacrifice a quality product in order to save a hypothetical dollar, because you can't convince me right now that these things are actually saving them any money. But
no, in fact, with all the extra work needed and the PR work like this is costing you money. So yeah, it's really, it's interesting to see how the industry is continuing to respond at all levels, dealing with AI and what's going on, both from the consumers to the developers to the publishers and then to C-suite investor type folks. I guess any additional thoughts before we go to the next news bit, which segues right.
Well, if we're ever going to talk about the game today, I probably just need to move on to the next news bit.
Yeah, no, I know we could definitely sit here and rant a long time, but I think the only additional thought I had was what's really challenging for me is art and text are a little bit more easy to parse. What's more challenging is I know that developers use AI in their code, whether it's copy and pasting from it or using other tools more directly. And so I think that's where it gets even more gray and blurry, where it's like, I will never look at the code. I will never know what any of that means. No. And so I'm sure there are probably plenty of games that have used AI in their code, and I have no idea. And so, it's, again, going to the like, how far are we going to need to dig if this is something that we're interested and invested in figuring out for ourselves? Like, I don't know. It's just a whole can of worms. So yeah,
fully agree.
And more sunshiny news related to AI to a certain level, citing a push towards AI, Microsoft has laid off 9,000 employees is the number that we've gotten. We know probably the number is more. The ripple effect is absolutely more in terms of developers and people within the company not able to support their families or themselves. But this is another one. Like, I think we had a Microsoft layoff just a few months ago.
Yeah, just a few months back.
So this is just another layoff in a pattern of layoffs that seems to be the new normal for any big company at this point right now, in terms of just looking at where the profits are, laying off the people to make sure their margins are where they need to be for the shareholders.
That's exactly it. I mean, my company just had its third round of layoffs in the last 9 months last week. Laid off a bunch of folks from our team out of France. And what I will say is, like, it is starkly different learning about the layoffs affecting those employees compared to almost any other country that works with us.
Mm-hmm.
They are required to give like 90 days notice. They are required to pay more than a full year of severance. They don't get to pick and choose which employees they keep. They have to work the leaders of my company have to work directly with the French government. And there's like a point system for like, does this person have a family? That's like more points. How long have they been there? That's more points.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I think what I've heard is the leaders at my company went in thinking, oh, this is going to be really surgical. We need to lay off 50% of our employees, but we're going to keep the ones that are like working on AI tools, you know. And turns out almost all of the AI team doesn't have enough points because they're young. They don't have families. They've been working at the company for only a couple of years. And so guess what? Like, this operating model doesn't work in a country where there are at least some degree of protections for workers. And y'all, if there were ever a thing for us to be rallying around right now, I mean, well, let me take that back. There are a million things to be rallying around right now.
Yeah.
Here's just one more. We'll just add this one to the list.
Yeah. What? Oh, never mind. Rosie, I was going to say I need a break because Rosie needs to get out, but she opened the door by herself.
Oh.
I did want to highlight, I just saw this on Blue Sky today, and so I'm just reading from my phone right now, but there was a post from ZeniMax Online Studios, United CWA, on the Microsoft layoff. So this is like the workers' sort of labor association. And what's really neat is this one small sliver of a shining moment, you know, in the dark clouds of what's going on. Let's see. It says, it is true a layoff may be in the future for some of our members. However, as a result of our organizing, we are able to ensure that these impacted will be able to depart with dignity. So basically, the fact that there has been some labor movement and work towards organizing in this particular studio shows that Microsoft wasn't able to just straight lay off everybody there. Like, they have, like you said, protections in place. And so, again,
Great.
This is why we support unions. This is why we support workers' rights, because in a time right now where companies do not care about people, they care about their bottom line. We need to do everything in our power to make sure we have the ability to protect ourselves and each other when these layoffs come around. It's not an if anymore. It's when they happen. So that was a little bit of a nice, like, well, at least some good came out of organization and organizing.
Yeah.
And, you know, even though it doesn't change the fact that so many people have lost their jobs, we can see this does make a difference, even in those little bits. Yeah, and it's just seeing some of the Microsoft CEO, like Phil Spencer, and some of the C-suite responses to what's going on. I'm not even going to read them because they're just really infuriating. Very just tone deaf, I feel like.
Always.
Yeah.
Ultimately, this is really good for our users. Ultimately, this is really good for our team members because it's always the same BS. Like, no time for it.
No. But yeah, definitely thoughts going to everybody who's been impacted.
Yeah.
It's like a really shitty time in the industry for sure. And it's going to continue to be challenging, but hopefully, hopefully with things like organizing, we can swing the pendulum back eventually. You have to hope that at some point we'd gotta. And also, I guess it's a good moment to highlight Microsoft is on the BDS list. So just to remind folks, boycott, divest, and sanctions movement for Palestine. Microsoft is super complicit. They fund the military, the Israeli military. Their tools are being used. So it's like there are a lot of things stacking up for me personally where I'm just like, I continue to see Microsoft doing all these things out in the world, doing these things to the people who are at their company. Makes it really hard to want to support Microsoft. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's also a good reminder. No ethical billionaires. It's like I remember the late 90s. I remember the early 2000s and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and how like this was a guy, the richest man in the world who was really concerned about people. And it's like I do if there's one thing that I appreciate today is that I feel like there's a much more savvy audience that's like these people don't care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They don't.
So just highlighting it, not to make you all sad or depressed, but I don't know, it's important to know, and it's important to still be fired up about it. I think that's the biggest thing. Know that these things are still happening and that we got to fight it. So
that's right.
As much as you can, support the other people around you. Don't support Microsoft. As much as you can. But with that, besides fighting against Microsoft and boycotting them, what have you been engaging with, Joel?
I cannot help but notice how similar our lists of interests and things are this week. Just to get this quick one out of the way, I did finally get to Act 3 of Expedition 33. Nice. I am just making a meal of this game, loving it. But on my trip over the weekend to see some family, I finally was able to put some real time into Blueprints. Ooh. So I'd love to know, I think I see that this is also on your list, but how's your experience been? I know you've been kind of not able to really hop into it in depth yet. How's it going for you?
So because Blueprints and Expedition 33 are the two sort of biggest titles in my backlog, I decided I'm going to just go headfirst into Blueprints, complete as much of that as I felt like I was able to, and then now I'm going to be moving into Expedition 33. I've completed my time with Blueprints. I think I'm around the 40-hour mark at this point. I think I've solved every puzzle that I can or that I care to, and all in all, it's a pretty good game. There's some story stuff near the end that got questions and I've got some critiques, but overall, probably the strongest puzzle game of the year. Hands down, easy, best puzzle game of 2025 for me.
Okay, that's encouraging. I will say I got to the billiards room where there's the dartboard puzzle, and I was on the plane playing this game, so I didn't have access to the internet, and I was looking at these numbers. Basically it's parts of a dartboard light up and you have to figure out how to sequentially hit those, hit the right number. And I tried it for I don't know, maybe 5 minutes. I was like, you know what, this is going to be a Joel goes to the internet and looks up a hint. But then I was like, Joel, you don't have any more keys. There's nowhere else for you to go. There are no more doors to unlock. And I really sat down and I took my time with it and I figured it out on my own. And that sense of satisfaction was just palpable. I nudged my partner and I was like, hey, I just did this thing. It was really cool. And I nerded out explaining the math behind it.
Yeah.
And, it's not it's a crazy complicated puzzle, but it's just one of those things where it's just difficult enough that I felt very cool when I had solved it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, Blueprints definitely wins for best light bulb moments.
I like
think
that.
for so far again for this year, where you play it and you just feel so smart when you figure the stuff out. And I love a game that makes me feel smart. So I totally agree. Like the first time you figure out the billiards puzzle, I think it's hard because some of the puzzles later, I think the other joy in Blueprints for me is realizing when you're at a puzzle, because most of the puzzles in the game you don't know are puzzles until they're puzzles. And so I think that's the really cool part of the game. I'm curious, did you mention if you've rolled credits yet, or if
No, not even close.
Okay
I think I've probably played about 12 hours at this point, but
Nice.
It was kind of my first time really sinking into it since we did the demo back in January.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I'm very excited to see how far you get in Blueprints, because there's a lot of lore in there. Like you start and there isn't that much story, but just there ends up being a lot. So it's really
interesting.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, but we have to talk about what we've been watching.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
K-pop Demon Hunters. I watched the first 10 minutes of this by myself, 15 minutes of this by myself, and I was like, no, this is like, I need people to watch this with me. It's too good off the bat. Watched it with my fam over the weekend, and it was like, it's 10 o'clock at night. We're bopping to the music. It's like, it's a musical. And I was just like, instant joy, like beginning to end, all joy. Such like some heartwarming moments. This is like absolutely like animated film of the year for me at this point. Like, I don't know what's going to possibly top it.
Yeah, honestly, I saw it in like, from the first maybe 3 minutes. I just knew. I was like, I know this is going to be good. Like, this is exactly the easygoing, heartwarming, feel-good musical sort of comedy. And just from a Korean perspective, I was like, this is just really cool to see all of this like Korean stuff, like not just the food, not just the K-pop, but like the little touches, like the little way of life touches that they just throw in so quickly and just don't even pay attention to, like narratively, but are all there. It was just amazing. Just beautiful. Like the whole thing. I'm just like, I feel like it's this like queer allegory. It's this like vulnerability story about, it's just everything about it. It's just so good. And then also the music. The music.
Also the music. Man, the big finale song with the Sasha boys. That song is so good. We were driving around Colorado just like listening to the album on repeat. It's just like so fun. I also like, it's interesting. You definitely see, like, obviously I'm not steeped in Korean culture, but like I've watched enough K-dramas to recognize the like tropes that they're specifically referencing. And like, that was really fun. But also like the way they kind of subverted a lot of typical like Western animated stories, like non-spoilers, like the role of the father of one of the main characters, and like how that would probably be like a linchpin story point in a lot of like Western animated stories that really wasn't a major part of the story here. There, like the complexity of kind of the villain character and like not shying away from the bad things that this person had done, but also like the arc that they go through was just like, I was in tears multiple times watching this movie and watching like how these characters grow. Yeah,
I honestly just wish there were more. There were spots where I was like, I feel like there could have been more here. Like, I wish we had more time to dig into it. And the only thing I felt by the end was I was sad that this was just a singular movie versus maybe a limited series, because there was so much context that I felt like we could have had with more of the characters that I wanted to know more. But also, I guess it's you always would rather have it leave you wanting more versus the overkill. But this was a story that I was like, I feel like there's more here. Like, it's such a rich, and maybe that's the credit to the writers. It felt so rich that I felt like there was more that was left unsaid, that they should have just crammed in there anyways.
There's a lot of speculation about if there's going to be a sequel. I think there's enough meat on the bones. They could absolutely do a sequel. I hope so.
I mean,
I hope so.
We know Netflix is looking at the dollar signs, and with how popular this is, I would be surprised if we didn't have a sequel.
Apparently, it's number 2 on the billboards right now for music. So incredible.
It's really cool, and it's neat to see that like it's just really neat to see. I was messaging a friend about how I was like, oh my god, people are talking about like the hats that the Saja boys wear. People are talking about these like traditional Korean clothes. People know what a hanbok is or jeogori is. You know, it's like, you know, all these things that people never knew. It's just like really cool to see. And the cosplays have been amazing. I have been so impressed with the turnaround. Like literally the day after this movie dropped, I'm pretty sure I saw like on TikTok already cosplays like the next day, which is kind of wild.
I think it was about 2 days before I started seeing the like K-pop like spontaneous dance circles where people like already knew the choreo hopping in. I was like, this is a pretty cool like cultural touchstone moment. I saw a lot of interesting comparisons between it and Sinners. That I
was gonna say that's our Barbenheimer of the summer is like the Sinners K-pop Demon Hunters.
I'm fully bought into that. Yeah, I didn't ever see Oppenheimer. I was just like, I don't really need a movie that glorifies this guy. Like, I'm going to pass on that. But yeah, the idea that we have 2 stories that are specifically telling like cultural narratives, highlighting the musicality and history of those cultures, like, and tell stories about like modern day issues. Like, I feel like really thrilled that we're getting this type of media right now. It's kind of shocking, to be honest.
Yeah, it is. It's great. I feel like we have been in a very lucky time for movies. So that's been awesome.
Yes. So that was my watch and my listen. And then my quick read is I've been going through A Day of Fallen Night, which is the prequel to Priory of the Orange Tree. I reread Priory. I think it still holds up. Generally, my feeling is it should have been 2 books. I think the first half is incredible, like one of the best fantasy books I've ever read. Beautiful storytelling, like the queer romances are amazing, but then this whole second half just feels like extremely plot driven, and like this happens, then this happens, then this happens, as opposed to like the first half, which is very like character driven. And I'm a little concerned the sequel is going to follow the trajectory of the second half of the book, or I guess the prequel. But I'm only maybe like 30% through, so we'll see. It's still early on. We'll let you guys know how it comes out.
Nice.
But what have you been listening to? What have you been reading? What else have you been engaging with?
So definitely in sort of the girl group moment right now. I've been listening to Cat's Eye. They had a album drop. It's their second, like, I don't know if it's technically an EP, but their second album basically is called Beautiful Chaos. I really love it. I think I read somewhere that like pop is really good when we're in recessions, and I'm like, well, then we must be in a hell of a recession, because I feel like the pop music coming out right now is so solid. Beautiful Chaos is a great listen. Like, Gnarly has been such a divisive song among the community, but I think no one can argue the fact that it is an earworm. And the album has the song called MIA that's just like, it's got this really driving beat. It's so good.
That's the one that I've heard so far. Is the whole album pretty good? Good listen?
I think the whole thing is a good listen. I think there are definitely some highs and lows, but the lows aren't that low. It's just they're just kind of like the palate cleansers for some of the more intense songs. I will admit I tried to get tickets because they announced their tour last week, and I was like, sweet, I will try and get tickets. I did not get up in time, or no, I didn't get to my phone in time because we were at the coast, and so I was just kind of like enjoying the beach, and I remembered too late. I was like, oh yeah, tickets are going on sale, and by the time I got to tickets, they were all sold out, even the additional days that they added. So yeah, that's unfortunate, but that's okay. I'll see if I can maybe scrounge some tickets together, but if not, I'm not too fussed about it. But it's cool to see them have so much popularity and see them being so successful.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're a great group. Every single one of them are incredibly talented. So yeah, I'm just happy to see that after all of the, if anyone watched the documentary about the making of Cat's Eye, there was a lot of turmoil throughout it. Not even between the girls, but just with how the company decided to form this group. And so I think I'm happy and I hope that they're able to enjoy the success. And then as for reading, I am also reading a prequel to a fantasy series. I just reread Sunrise on the Reaping, which is one of the prequels to the Hunger Games trilogy. This was my second time reading it. I read it when it first released, a few months ago, I feel like, earlier this year. And I reread it now just to like kind of absorb it a little bit more. And I think it's a solid book. It's a challenge to create a story where everybody knows what's going to happen. And I think Suzanne Collins is a good YA fantasy author. And I think this is a solid YA fantasy book, especially for the times. So yeah, it's a smooth read. It's an easy read. You can go through it and it's not like too taxing. And yeah, I don't know if you're a fan of the Hunger Games. I would recommend it.
Oh yeah, I have it actually. I have both the prequels. I haven't read either one yet, which is a little wild now that I think about it, because when the first trilogy came out, I remember it was like one of those things where like I read the first book in like a night, which never happens to me. I ran to half price books. I found the second one like over the course of a week. I had read all three, and it's like I haven't. Considering how excited I was for that, I don't know why I haven't gone back to it. Maybe I'm just worried that it's like a phase that has passed for me or something.
I think that's legitimate. I think I was also a little bit nervous, especially because the first prequel, which I am forgetting the exact, it's like the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
I think so.
And Songbirds. That for me was a good read, but it wasn't like, oh my God, like this blows my mind, kind of thing. I think I personally enjoyed Sunrise on the Reaping a little bit more simply because it covers a character that I'm personally more interested and invested in, which is Haymitch. And I think it feels a little bit like fan fiction or fan servicey, but not in a bad way to me, where it's like you get a lot of lore for the characters that you know from the series. And so it feels like you're getting a more complete picture of perhaps some of the intentions of these characters in the Hunger Games when you realize what they've been through in the past. And it's like, who knows if she initially planned it that way or retconned it, but it doesn't matter because it still reads, again, very fun.
Yeah. I feel like I remember her saying something like she felt like she had something to say about what is happening in the current political discourse, and that's why she decided to do it. Who knows how much of it is that versus like a movie studio saying like we want a prequel.
Exactly. Because I think and folks can correct me if I'm wrong if you know this, but I think they had like purchased the rights for this movie like before the book even came out, so it's definitely she's definitely not craving any funds for anything at this point. I
think she's doing all right.
I think she's doing okay. But it does, again, it reads a little bit sort of fan servicey, fanficky, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I think if I can read it and still feel happy about the characters, that's good. And I felt happy about the characters.
I mean, especially like 20 years later, right? Is that how long it's been? 2015? No, 10 years.
God, no.
2015 was 10 years ago, not 20. Sorry, everyone. Sorry for the existential crisis.
Yeah. Oh my God. But yeah, so that was fun. And I'm trying to think about what I want to read next. There's a book that's coming out that's this like, I forget what it's called, but it's a book about sort of the evolution of language through social media. That's coming. I pre-ordered it and it comes out tomorrow, July 15th, as of this recording. So I am probably going to read something nonfiction next just to change it up a little bit.
Nonfiction while the world is on fire?
I know.
Wow.
I
Bold
reserve
move,
it.
Jenny.
I know. I reserve it for very special, small segments of my time. But yeah. So to close out the pastry case, two just notable releases to highlight. The first is Worship, which is coming out July 16th. This is like Pikmin, but if you were the zealot of an eldritch god. So you are basically a cultist trying to gather followers to sacrifice to your god. Again, very much, if you've played Cult of the Lamb, kind of Cult of the Lamb-y vibes, but more Pikmin-inspired mechanics. You get to draw... This sounds so gruesome. It's, I think, if I remember correctly, it's like black and white, so it's very sort of like starkly not monochromatic, but it's just got the two colors. And you can draw sort of images in blood to create spells to like do things with your followers.
That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. And then Gaucho and the Grasslands is also out July 16th. Very different vibe. This is a farming sim where you play as a Latin cowboy. Basically, your classic farming sim, but in a more Latin American setting, which is very cool. Don't often see that. And you're helping make the world a better place. So very cute. As always, subscribe to the newsletter. It's where you can get links to the games that we just mentioned, all the stuff that we just talked about, and the articles we referenced. Go to geeksandgrounds.com to do that. And the newsletter gets sent on Tuesdays, the same day the podcast comes out. Usually. I do my best.
And it's appreciated.
Yeah, thank you. So, now to this month's brew. It's TV time. I'm so excited. Yeah. Oh, where do we begin? Deltarune. I love Deltarune.
Deltarune. Can I, before we do this, before we go into summary, how did you discover the Deltarune Undertale world? Like, do you remember what it was that like had you get into it initially?
Honestly, I was browsing Steam, and I forget what they called it because it was Steam curated games differently back in the day.
Back in my day.
Back in like 2016? I don't remember when this was. Too long ago. But I remember I was just clicking through Steam and Undertale popped up, and I saw that it had recently released and that there was like choice. It was sort of like you could choose whether you wanted to be good or bad and like, you know, save everyone pacifist route or, you know, murder everyone in the murder route. And I remember seeing that and thinking, this looks kind of cool. Looks like it's getting some pretty good reviews. Mm-hmm. And then just picking it up randomly and just playing it. And nobody had told me about it. I didn't really have a ton of friends that played games at that time. So I didn't really talk to anyone about it. And I just loved it so much. But I never went and like looked online for stuff about it until I came into the game industry and I realized, oh, it's actually a thing. Like it's not just, oh, I just like this little indie game. It's like people really know about this game. I know a lot of people found Undertale through like Homestuck and stuff, and I was never a Homestuck kid. So yeah, I came into it in a very weird, like, I randomly discovered it. I had my own little bubble, which was actually probably a good thing, considering the hype and what it can do and fandoms and what they can do. But I had my bubble with it, and that's just how I kind of fell in love with the game.
I love that. I feel like, and I almost wonder about like, the idea of it being so special and personal to you before finding out about the larger following. Like, yeah, I had this experience with a Goofy movie actually, where like, I always thought that like, I didn't have any friends that knew about this movie growing up. It was just like my family watched it over and over and over, my brothers, and I loved it. And then I don't know, I think it was like Atlanta did like the mockumentary episode where they were like, Goofy movie is the blackest movie ever made or something like that. And first of all, great episode. But I remember watching that and being like, wait a minute, other people know Goofy movie. And it's just like exploded since then. It's like all over my FYP. I get ads for Powerline t-shirts now. Like there's something about like, maybe because it was so special to me growing up without having any outside influence, that when it finally became part of the cultural discourse, it made me like really appreciate it a lot more. Like I've rewatched it dozens of times in the last decade. So I don't know, maybe there's something to that.
Yeah. I'm curious, how did you find out about Undertale?
You.
Oh, Okay.
I think it was one of those games where I think, so you and I started working together like 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. And I remember you giving me like a handful of games to recommend that you recommended me play. And I never really like I just like, I was like, I'm a AAA guy through and through. It's the only thing that I knew. And you had me like try out Brothers and a couple other games. And I think it was maybe like 2018 as you were leaving that I actually was like, okay, I'm gonna like really give this a shot. And I was like, this is life-changing. A game where it's like complete pacifist run. The game like knows whether or not like I attacked the very first time as a part of like, though, like you were onto something and like you had me clocked. Absolutely. So I don't know. For me, it was kind of like the exact inverse where it's like, I finally took the advice of a person who was very knowledgeable and trusted as a source and like had this absolutely incredible journey. So,
nice.
And I had someone to talk to about it. So,
yeah. Oh, and now we're doing the same with Deltarune, which is great.
Well, thank you for humoring me. Shall we begin by reading the summary?
Yeah. Go
okay. Here's the description from Steam. Dive into the parallel story to Undertale. Fight or spare your way through action-packed battles as you explore a mysterious world alongside an endearing cast of new and familiar characters. Chapters 1 through 4 will be available on launch, with more planned as free updates. So we as Geeks and Grounds played chapters 1 and 2 back in, was it January, February?
I think it was December.
Was it December? Oh my goodness.
Maybe January.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But yeah, maybe December.
Yeah, I think it was at holiday time. So yeah, we played the first 2 chapters back then. And so we've been waiting for chapters 3 and 4 to come out. And then today we're going to be talking specifically about chapter 3.
Yes. So as with all of our spoiler casts and our deep dives, this is a little different because the game has been released episodically, just for the sake for our being able to keep things straight and not have to talk around too much. We are going to assume that you have a knowledge of chapters 1 and chapters 2. So we are going to be spoiling or referring to things just freely from those 2 sections of the game. We'll do a quick like run through of the plot just so that we can kind of like all be in the same place. But those are spoiler okay. as well as chapter 3, which we'll be discussing today. We will avoid spoilers for chapter 4, and we won't be referring to anything in chapter 4. So if you have not played chapter 4, a-okay, you're good to go. We won't be spoiling anything for you from that section. So,
absolutely.
Just as a really quick last time on Deltarune. Chapter 1 was the Card Kingdom. We were introduced to Chris, they, them, and a world that felt very familiar but very different, especially if you've played Undertale, which is recommended for this game, for sure. We met Susie, who is sort of the school bully and a little bit of the school outcast. And Chris and Susie meet and head into the supply closet to grab some chalk, only to find like Narnia, like a world within the supply closet. They meet a new friend, Ralsei, who tells them about this prophecy, about the heroes of the dark world, the Lighteners, and they have this adventure through the Card Kingdom and meet lots of friends and have lots of hijinks. We get to meet Lancer, for example, the prince, the squire prince. We see Susie reluctantly becoming part of the team and learning the power of friendship. It's a grand old time. The conclusion for chapter 1 is absolutely wild because they return home. They get out of their wonderful fantasy time. They say, oh, this was a great grand old time, let's go home. Chris goes to bed, but before Chris goes to rest, they rip out their soul, which is a heart, throws it into the cage, a knife materializes in their hand, and the end of the chapter then happens. So we were left major cliffhangers.
Major cliffhanger.
Did you want to take on chapter 2?
Sure. Chapter 2 is our cyber world. So in the first one, we were in the supply closet, a lot of think board games thematically. This time it's cyber world, where you're inside of like a library computer kind of thematically. So you wake up with Toriel, who's Chris's mom, who is yelling at Chris for eating all the pie. And pie comes up a lot in the Undertale game as well, as I recall.
Yeah.
Chris and Susie meet back up with Ralsei and see their rooms in Castletown, where they are in kind of transported to. When heading to the library to go do homework, they see another Dark Foundation cyber world. Another adventure ensues, but this time they're joined by Noelle and Birdley, two of their classmates. When teaming with Noelle, this part of the story can take one of two paths: peaceful route or the weird Snowgrave route, which I don't know that I remembered that. I think I must have just done the peaceful route.
Yeah, I don't think either of us did the Snowgrave or weird route, because that one involves having Noelle attack everybody. And so it's kind of like the sort of murder route of Undertale. I guess it's like similar, but it has some pretty wild and dark implications, but we have not played
Interesting.
That. Yeah.
So you go through, excuse me, and you seal the dark fountain. And that's kind of your task with each of these. Like there's a dark fountain in each of these worlds that you're trying to seal. You return home and Susie and Chris have a sleepover. Yet again, Chris rips out their soul and the game seems to allude to Chris slashing Toriel's tires. And then Chris awakes in the middle of the night and creates a third dark fountain in the house. The last thing you see is the television with a menacing smile. So there's a sleepover, you're in the living room, and all of a sudden, like, the darkness gushes forth from the floor, and you realize that somehow Chris is part of the creation of these dark worlds.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So much has happened in that. And really quickly, just to switch up the format a little, because there's so much to this game, I think it would benefit the conversation around it, where we talk about just the plot, just go through what happens, just literally, and then deep dive some of the themes and some of the questions that came up as we played. So I guess, did you want to start with the plot summary, or do you want me to go for it?
No, why don't you do this one?
Okay, I'll start, and then you can take over halfway through.
Great.
So, Chapter 3, it's TV time. We have a different intro than we did before. We wake up in the dark world already. We don't jump into a fountain or anything. And we learn as we start walking around, we're actually in the backstage of what seems to be this really dilapidated television set. Ralsei shows up, which they do a lot, and we get a major reveal for this beginning first part of the game. Chris already knows this because we know that we are controlling Chris. But Susie does not know about the dark worlds, the Lightners, and everything. And the reveal that Ralsei gives Susie is that dark worlds are an illusion. Darkners are just anthropomorphized versions of household items, common items, and that none of this is real. So Ralsei is talking about, like, don't be my friend, or, don't really think about me. We're just here to serve you. And if you don't want us, just leave us be and we'll just be abandoned because you are the priority as Lightners, which is absolutely wild. They continue to explore, and we meet Tenna, which is Chris's household television set. And Tenna just is incredible. And Tenna's line, it's TV time, and all Tenna wants to do is bring the crew together to play some mini games and enjoy just good ratings and good fun as a television program.
Think like 1970s Bob Barker TV host.
And it's incredible because Tenna is also like 3D modeled, kind of like like Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong Country, basically sort of 3D pixel. That's kind of the sort of the texture and the way that Tenna is modeled. So it's like I'm
so glad you mentioned that. I forgot about that. Yeah, it's
like kind of dissonant but cool because you get this like 2D pixel art with everyone else, and then sort of Donkey Kong Country adventures with Tenna, and like incredibly just beautiful like word font, just cool stuff. So the party then participates in some mini games. We got a Zelda-like, we've got a cooking mini game, a Susie-Zilla, and throughout this, they're exploring green rooms, meeting some side characters, meeting a throuple, and getting into all sorts of hijinks. But they realize they're getting distracted from their main goal, which is to turn off the dark fountain. And so when they demand Tenna stop the games and let them continue, we then hear more about Tenna's story, about the abandonment that he feels and his deal with the night to basically hold these three hostage and allowing him to return to relevancy. So we hear the Roaring Night is kind of back in this world again and sort of causing this mayhem and chaos.
Yeah.
We also learn that Toriel is here, but she's sleeping and in a gotcha ball, so she's kind of protected. And Tenna just goes absolutely unhinged when we try to push our way through, and so that's like our main boss fight antagonist for this chapter. Did you want to take the remaining portions?
After the final challenge from Tenna, we look like we're about to make nice, but the knight arrives, attacks Tenna, and attempts to capture Toriel. The party fights the knight. This is knight with a K, by the way.
Yes.
Did anyone get to the end? Is rescued by Undine, who's from one of the earlier chapters.
Right.
And then the knight kidnaps Undine and takes her to the bunker at the outskirts of town. Chapter 3 ends with the fountain unsealed and the bunker door opening itself for Chris. There's like a bunker in the real world that has like a code, and we're not sure. Like Susie and Chris find it and they're like, well, we don't know the code, so that's it. And they start walking back, and then you have one of those cut scenes where Chris comes down, knows the code, and you can see it has access to this dark world.
Yeah. And so we're like, Chris knows this stuff. Yeah, and is not willing to share it with us. Oh my gosh, there's so much. There's so much here. So that was our speedy run through the plot. Again, we've already brought up previously in our chapters 1 and 2 discussions, this game will address themes of like escapism, nostalgia, fate, self-agency, just like personal growth and change as you go on adventures and learn things with your friends. So we're going to now deep dive and like really hunker down and break into this, into the meat of this.
Okay. I got to start by giving major flowers to this chapter.
Yeah.
My biggest criticism coming out of chapter 2, because we played 1 and 2 back to back, was the mechanics felt really repetitive to me after a certain point. And it's like, I don't want to do the battle. I want to just like proceed. Like, I get it. I see what's happening here. I think if you go back to the recording, you can probably find me saying that quote almost word for word. And I feel like they understood that the audience was like, especially considering how diehard this fandom is, was like, hey, we can skip past some of the like, we're in the real world, we have to find our way down to the dark world.
Yeah.
And they just gave us like this really incredible synopsis that you read that just kind of explained, hey, as a reminder to you, the reader, but to you, Susie, here's what's happening. You're going into this dark world. You have to shut down these fountains. Like, they just give it to us all at once. I love that. Mm-hmm. I felt like there were far fewer like battle encounters in this chapter, which made it feel for me like I got to really like sink my teeth into the story a bit more. It's like any complaint that I had about chapters 1 and 2, chapter 3 just felt like, oh, I don't have that anymore. It's gone.
Yeah.
What was your like general feeling like coming into chapter 3?
It's funny because as I was playing chapter 3, I felt very like, what is it when you're like off your balance, like off your good foot or whatever that saying is, where I'm like, it felt so odd to be doing the mini games where I was expecting more of the traditional battles. Like I think this was a good thing. And the more I sit with it and the more I thought about it after I played chapter 3, the more I loved it. But while I was playing, it made me feel really uncertain about what was going to be happening, because it was just like a, let's throw this formula that you're really familiar with out the window. And it almost felt like the first time we hopped into Deltarune and we see all the Undertale characters that we're so familiar with, but then things aren't quite right. You know, they're not quite the same thing. And I felt like this was sort of the mechanical version of that, where I'm like, I have these characters that I know and we're doing things that I get, but mechanically we're not doing what I thought we would be doing at all. But it was incredibly fun and I loved every second of it. And honestly, looking back, I think more favorably on this chapter than I did while playing it. And I'm like playing it again right now, and it's just it's so fun. And it's a really good just refresher, like a palate refresher, like you said.
Yeah. I gotta say, like, the mixing up of the minigames, I enjoyed the minigames. They were fun. Like, yeah. I had a good time playing them, and that is not something I always feel when I'm playing minigames that feel like separate from the driving action of the game. Like you still have the battle mechanics, like you can encounter the little like anthropomorphized monsters that you have to like find a way to pacify or show mercy to and spare. You still have that, but because the central story is driven more by these mini games, it felt like a really good way to honor the story that we were used to while giving us a fresh way to engage with the world. So I like that. I like that Tenna had a very in my opinion, a more robust motivation behind what they were doing. Like you alluded to this in the summary, like Tenna describing their abandonment issues is saying like, hey, you used to sit in front of me and put in your VHS tapes of your favorite movies, and we'd all gather around. Like again, Tenna is an anthropomorphized television set,
right?
And it was kind of like this. It almost like a Toy Story-esque, like, oh, what happens when you're tired of your Woody doll because you got the new Buzz Lightyear, right? And like, I don't think we have cell phones in the real world, but like, I could almost imagine this conversation today being like, hey, you used to sit down and like watch movies on the big screen, and now you're on your TikToks all day. And I don't know, I really thought that was like an interesting way to like set up the motivation for kind of the antagonist of this part of the story.
Yeah, I think what was really neat is that like with the Card King, like the King Lancer's dad, I forget what his full name was, but the King, and with Queen, actually they were just King and Queen. With those two, it was interesting because these are objects that you assume Chris and their friends played with. Like the King is probably from the cards that they played with when they were kids. The laptop is one that they like checked out from the library. And so you have these like very tangential relationships to him. And so Tenna is the first Darkner that really has a closeness to Chris that we have not seen before, and I think it's really interesting thinking about this idea of escapism, because for me, when I was thinking about Tenna, let me look at my notes. So I wrote down about Tenna that it's interesting to me that Tenna is all about escapism and TV is usually about escapism. But for Chris, it's more of a reminder of the family that they had before and the relationships with their brother, the times before their family was divorced or their parents were divorced. And so Tenna is like the opposite of escapism for Chris. And this is the first time that sort of that real world has like come into a place that normally is like, oh, let's go on this fun adventure and not remember the real world. So I thought Jenny, that was really interesting.
You need a podcast or a blog or a newsletter. That was such an incredible analysis. I had not at all considered like the opposite of escapism, the realism that TV is for them. Like, wow, that really colors how I experience this chapter. Because like at this point, you kind of have confirmation that Chris is somehow at least partially responsible for these dark events occurring. And so like you're kind of skeptical of Chris's motivations. They reference that Chris looks different in this chapter. And like this pays off continually throughout chapters 3 and 4. And I hadn't connected the dots to the personal relationship between Chris and the TV, but like, you know, the board games were inside the school supply closet. The laptops belong to the library. This portal opened up in Chris's living room. It's Chris's TV. That personal relationship is way stronger there. And I would not have been able to put my finger on that. And it's a really clever analysis.
Yeah. Well, and I think what really struck me, because I think during Tenna's monologue, there's a scene where it's not just Chris and their family. I think it's Azriel and Asgore and Toriel. Like that's their core family, and they're all sitting in front of the TV. But there's other friends too. Like I think you assume it's Noelle and maybe Des and their parents, and so it's like not just their family, but other families gathered around this TV. This was like a community thing, and it was so like I got mini goosebumps when in that monologue Tenna talks about how everyone kind of one by one doesn't gather around that television anymore, and it just becomes eventually it's just Toriel who is there kind of just on her own watching TV. And, you know, it was kind of hard because I was thinking about like, oh man, my mom, you know, I remember when like we were young and we would watch TV and like my parents got divorced. And so then it was just us three. And then like I went to school and my brother went to school. And so it's like my mom, and it's just kind of like evoked that image for me on a personal level about what happens when sort of like that family unit moves and sort of like evolves. But yeah.
You know, for me, all I was thinking of was Randy Newman singing Strange Things in the Toy Story soundtrack. Yeah. And that strange things, like that was all I could think for that scene. So it was like a way more disconnected for me. So I can see like the personal connection, how that would like change your engagement with this particular story.
Yeah. I guess, did you have anything else you want to talk about in terms of Tenna just as a character?
I have a nonsense thing that I would just like to shout out as really great. And that is, as you're playing these games early on, you get to, you get like a high score and you get to put in initials for your character.
Yeah.
And I, of course, did the classic ASS for my initials. Mm-hmm. And in game, you get kind of like a shout out from Susie for doing that, who also puts ASS for their initials. And I want to make sure that point does not go unrecognized and unrewarded. Agreed. Because it cracked me up.
It's so good. Yeah, you get Susie being like, you're a real one, or like whatever, the equivalent. Like, I always knew you were great. Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, I guess the other thing to call out is like, for Tenna specifically, is throughout this game, for the first like 75%, you keep walking in on Tenna having conversations with someone. And so it's very clear pretty early on that there's someone else kind of pulling the strings here, even though like this whole adventure is very personal to Tenna, that there's someone else that is driving kind of the negative actions here. I'm curious, like for me, because I think you find out about 50% of the way through that they're talking to the knight, but for the first 50%, I was wondering if there was some conversation happening with Chris, if it was like one of those like, spoiler alert, Fight Club situations going on, and like you're talking to like an alternate personality or something. I don't know. Did you have any theories before you kind of figured out who was pulling the strings?
Yeah. So, okay. I'm not at that point yet again, but the first playthrough, there's a, I forget how we got there, but there is a point in time, there's like an island that you can go to when you're just like exploring randomly during the Zelda mini game.
Yeah.
And basically if you go to that island in the secret game room, which I don't know if you got to that like giant console room where you can play the game just as Chris. I think you can only get it if you're like S tier, and you can like, I think it's like part of the S tier. I forget how you get in there.
I did not get close to S tier. No, okay. I did not get above B on anything.
So there is a conversation that you can go in where basically it does sound like Tenna and Chris have had conversations before, where Tenna's like, and this is why I need to play again, because I didn't take screenshots because I was like, oh my God. But Tenna kind of says something along the lines of like, well, I did what you said, or like I got what you told me to. And so I think there is a like red string between Chris and Tenna, and perhaps, and this is a wider theory, Chris and maybe the knight is my theory.
Oh, that would be so interesting.
And I think, go ahead.
Okay, what if? This is the theory. There's no rationale for this, but I think this game has done such a good job of subverting expectations. I'm just going to throw this one out. There's definitely something happening with Chris, like taking out their soul, having almost like separate memories, it seems, at some points. And I think like we are playing this as Chris, sometimes like the soulless version of Chris, trying to close off these fountains. And we're being told from the lore that this is like a bad thing. And one of the things I'm wondering is, for a long time I thought the knight was maybe Chris's brother, but I'm wondering if the knight is like a representation of Chris, and somehow if these like fountains like blowing are actually like a good thing for them to like work through something. I don't know.
I think I'm going to save all of my theory for next week.
Oh, okay.
I think I do agree with you that there is something more to Chris, and I think there is something. I think they have a potentially different agenda for the fountains than we do. And what I think is really interesting, and when we think about like the agency element that we keep kind of circling around, is what we are represented as players is the heart. When the heart is in Chris, we control Chris. But there are moments when Chris resists that control, where if you try to respond a certain way, they won't. Or if you try to do something, they won't. I think that there is going to be a point in future chapters where maybe Chris and us will be more at odds. I think that would be really cool if that was the case.
Whoa. You're blowing my mind. I honestly had not even made the connection that we are only controlling the heart. Like, now that you say that, I'm like, oh, yeah, obviously. But I had totally missed that that's what was happening. And that anytime the heart is not in Chris, you're not controlling them. Oh, God, Joel. Stay humble, people.
No, that's why these discussions are great. But I think you're cooking with your theory. I think there's some stuff in there that we definitely can dig into a little more deeply next week.
Yeah. Okay. So I have another question for you. So early on in your synopsis, you talked about Ralsei showing up and talking about how like they're not real, and like you shouldn't try to form a connection with me. And like what we didn't talk about in the summary is like Susie has very clearly been developing feelings for Ralsei, and like there's something like it could be totally platonic. It seems like there's something more, but during this conversation, you can see that like Susie gets really upset by this, and like as Chris, you have to kind of do some repair to like get everybody on the same team again. What's your take on this? Like, what do you think's happening with this conversation? Like, how do you see this like playing a role in our understanding of this world?
Yeah, I think, okay, so there's the character just of Ralsei himself. And I think even in the chapters 1 and 2 discussions, we talked about being a little bit, not like suspicious necessarily. I think we may have used the word suspicious, but it felt like Ralsei wasn't being completely honest with us. And I think more of that continues throughout this chapter, where I feel like, okay, Ralsei feels like he's been withholding information until absolutely necessary to give it to us. And that doesn't feel great. And so now I'm just continuously wondering, what is it that Ralsei is not sharing with us? Because for whatever reason, he deems it not worth sharing at that point in time. It makes me nervous because I'm like, who are you to decide what's worth sharing and what's not? And so it's interesting to me when Ralsei shows and has the impetus to like share this knowledge. I was surprised though that this was something they shared, like Ralsei shared so openly at the beginning of this chapter.
It was not subtext. It was the text.
It was. And I think it makes me wonder about Ralsei's purpose and who Ralsei really is, because I think Ralsei seems to have this delineation between darkeners and lighteners much more harshly than every other darkener we talk to. And he seems to focus on that a lot more. And this conversation with Susie made me more curious about like what Ralsei's deal is in terms of like, is he like, what kind of darkener is he, where he's focusing? Is it just because he's part of the prophecy and he's like maybe more significant that way, and that's why that's important? But yeah, it just made me more curious about what Ralsei's origin story was, because I feel like the more he shares, the less it seems like he's a darkener.
I agree with you. I also like, I will be disappointed. I'll put it like this.
Yeah.
I will be disappointed if Chris's brother doesn't show up in some meaningful way in some of these chapters. We learn in this one explicitly, I think for the first time, that Chris's brother is away at college. They say that. And so
They say that in the first chapter.
Oh, do they?
Yeah,
okay.
they did.
Cool. So it just feels like, we spent a long time talking about the difference in the bedrooms, in Chris's bedroom. Like, Chris's side of the bedroom, nothing on the wall, like just kind of a bloody cage in the corner.
Yeah.
Your brother's side of the room, like normal teenage side of the room. And so it just feels like there's something really meaningful here about this. And like, I don't know, maybe there's something where like the brother is somehow in the world somewhere. Maybe they're connected to Ralsei. Like, I don't know. And I don't necessarily want that to be what's going on.
Yeah.
But I do want there to be some meaningful interaction with the brother. Like, it just feels like it feels fundamental somehow to like this story. And I can't quite put that piece into the puzzle yet.
Yeah, I think while initially I thought maybe Ralsei was supposed to be a representation of some sort, not like his brother exactly, but maybe like an idealized version, the more we play, the less I feel like that's the case. But I do agree, and I do think we'll see what's his name? Azriel, his brother, their brother. I think we'll see Azriel meaningfully in the game, probably in chapter 5. But I would be curious to see how he fits, because I currently don't quite, I don't know. I just don't know. The only thing I am, first, at least from my theories, is I don't think Ralsei is Azriel. I don't think they're correlated in that one-to-one way.
Yeah. I agree. I think your point that Ralsei doesn't feel like a darkener is, I think, what I'm latching onto here is like, there are other forces in these dark worlds, and like we'll learn more about this as these chapters progress, I'm certain. But I'm really curious about the interplay between the light world and the dark world. Like, in the last chapter we had Birdie and Noelle show up. Like, in this chapter, Toriel in the Gasha Pond. Were there any other real world lighteners that were down there?
At the very end, somehow Undine came down.
That's right.
We're just like, okay, so somehow she found her way down there. We don't know if she knows how to do it and did it intentionally. We don't know if she like fell down there. So we are seeing more of that bleed from the real world into the dark world.
I don't know. I'm just really curious about this. And like, to me, just to be like totally transparent, like all like playing cards on the table, like the mechanics of this game, like all of these chapters, can be really frustrating for me sometimes. Like I was telling Jenny, be forewarned for chapter 4. Like for me, it took 10 hours to get through chapter 4. And that was mostly because 2 specific required boss fights, I literally like wore my Steam Deck battery down 3 full times trying to beat. So
no, oh my gosh.
They're like mechanically, like this game is not like 100% my style. But the story of these games, of these chapters, is that it's just so compelling. And like, I have so many questions. It's like when you're watching a TV show where it's like, I don't love the acting, but the storyline is so good and I can't let it go. That's me with this series in general, I think. I don't know how else to frame it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And it's hard because Undertale, for sure, I think Deltarune has eased up enough on that bullet hell combat that I feel more comfortable recommending it to people. But it's tough because if you haven't played Undertale, then you don't have a lot of like the back Easter egg kind of lore to really appreciate what's going on. But Undertale's so hard because some of those battles are really tough. And I think chapter 4 does, and we'll get into it when we talk more about chapter 4, but I do think chapter 4 touches on that more than chapter 3 does. For sure.
Agreed. Totally agreed.
Yeah. So let's talk about the mechanics in the mini games, because we talked about, Ralsei shows up, we had that major reveal. We're really questioning Ralsei's character, but I don't know. For me, even though I'm questioning him, I still can't help but love him. You know what I mean? Like I think he's not being totally honest, but I also don't think he's a villain.
No, I fully agree. I definitely see him as like someone that is like a true hero of this story in a way that I can't trust that Chris is, and like intentionally so, right? Like the game is telling you like something is going on with Chris. Like they're not a fully trustworthy character at this point. But like Susie and Ralsei to me are the ones that I'm like really anchored on, especially through chapter 3, is like when they show up and like just, hey, I'm re-explaining, this is your like chapter 1 refresh of the sequel book that you haven't read the first book in a long time. Like I am kind of fully committed in chapter 3 that Ralsei is like out for the good of the world, but I don't know what that means. I guess is kind of where I am.
Yeah. I agree. So when we go through TV time, TV time is Tenna has prepared a slew of games for us to enjoy, to bring up that popularity rating, bring joy to the masses. And so we have 3 games. We have one that's like a Zelda-like, one that's cooking, and one that's Susie-Zilla. Now, what's interesting is in each of these games, particularly the Zelda-like, we meet a couple characters that I love so much. So let's go through the Zelda-like first. This is sort of the desert island you're exploring I forget exactly what you're getting keys to unlock a tomb, basically, or like a pyramid.
You have to get like this orb and these keys to open the door to get inside. There's like this picture mechanic where you can like take interesting pictures and like opens passageways or find secret areas. I'll just say like high level, I could have played this game the entire time. I love this mini game. I thought it was so fun. What were your thoughts on it?
I was less hot on it. I thought it was all right. I thought it was fine, but I would mostly was like, no, but I want to get to the story. Let's get to the story. And it was funny. I was like, someone call Bo Burnham, because we had a video game where our characters were playing the video game, where we were playing the video game, and we had the like layers of game section. And it reminded me of the Bo Burnham skit where he does that.
The reaction.
With the reaction video.
Ugh.
And I was just like, man, how many levels of meta are we going to get in here with this game where these characters are playing a game? So I did appreciate that a lot.
We do get very deep into that, especially later when they start like switching their controllers around and you're like, you're Chris controlling Susie or Susie controlling Chris. And like, I thought that was like, it was very cute. It reminded me of like playing video games with my siblings, which is kind of like, kind of the point, right, of this whole chapter is like, there were these times you were all sitting on the couch together. Like there were shenanigans where you were swapping controllers around, or like you taped a piece of cardboard to the TV because you didn't want somebody screen watching to see where you were in GoldenEye. Like, I felt like they just like really called to that in a really interesting way.
Yeah. And again, it's that idea of like this for Susie, especially. Ralsei not as much, because Ralsei is technically of this world as far as we know. Susie, this is like total escapism. And we haven't talked too much about Susie and her background, but we know that she's not from a great family life. And so this is like her time to just, oh my God, I get to like enjoy these things that I never maybe really got to enjoy. But again, for Chris, the whole time I'm just thinking like, God, you're reliving these memories and they're increasingly kind of uncomfortable. Where, and we'll talk about this as we get into other of the mini games, but we're referring to like their friend Des, who is now missing and they don't know where they are, and it's like we're referring to things that are maybe not allowing Chris that escapism that the other worlds did.
I don't have any notes about this. So tell me about this Des thing. I must have totally missed this.
So I think we learned more about this in chapter 2, where Noelle has a older sister named Des, who they all used to hang out together. Des went missing a few years ago. And so the implications from some of this chapter more and more make me feel like Chris perhaps either feels guilt around it or is related somehow to something that happened. I don't know quite yet what to make of it. I need to play it a little bit more to just gather my thoughts. But yeah, it's interesting because each of these minigames, the Zelda-like, that friends around the couch, cooking. I think they were talking about how it was like you and Asriel, and I think Des did like cooking together, and you did cooking shenanigans, and then the music, sort of rock band mini game as well.
God, I love that mini game. I truly enjoyed all three of these so much. Like the cooking one was like, I expect it to be kind of like a Overcooked situation where like you have to communicate across all three characters.
Right.
That's not what it is. It's like there are these like things coming from the ceiling. You have to like dodge, or that you have to like grab the ingredients to like serve to people. And it was like just the perfect amount of difficulty, which is how I felt about the Zelda thing, where it's just like there were just enough interesting tools to use that I really enjoyed, like the diversity of the Zelda experience.
Yeah.
The final game, like the rock band game, first of all, very funny. Like you're playing this, Susie's playing this, Ralsei's playing this. Susie within like 15 seconds of each minigame is like fully out because they're not like playing correctly on beat or whatever. And so it's like when you're playing Garage Band or Guitar Hero with your friends, and it's like, well, I'm still going because I'm playing the song,
right?
But you got out because you missed too many notes right away.
Right.
Again, perfectly captured that moment.
Yeah, Susie is my favorite character of this whole series. Like, just hands down, I love Susie. I'm a Susie stan. Yeah, I really want to highlight that Raise Your Bat mini game, because that for me has a lot of lore implications that I'm still trying to dig into. I linked the lyrics because I don't know if you noticed this. When you are playing, Ralsei, who is singing, changes the lyrics as they sing them. And so the song, when you start, for example, I'm reading from the lyrics sheet that I shared with you. The first line is technically when the demon heart is crying. Ralsei changes it to when the happy heart is smiling. Going to the chorus line, raise your bat for the burning fight. Ralsei changes it to raise your hat for a funny sight. So Ralsei is intentionally another example of Ralsei changing things for some reason that we do not know. But there are lyrics that are original lyrics that have to do with demon hearts and bats and burning fights. And when the future has lost, face the fight. You know, all of this very like kind of more video gamey, raise up and fight, you know, lyrics. Ralsei changes them to be silly, goofy lyrics.
I have a note in my notebook that says, cannot at all follow the words of the song because I'm so focused on the rhythm of the
That's
game.
what I did. Which I was so happy that I had this recorded because I was only able to notice it going back and like editing. And I was like, wait a second. And you can see as the lyric pans out and you go through it, Ralsei changes it. And so it's like you only really realize it if you either choose to go back or you are just such a good gamer that you can read lyrics at the same time as hitting buttons, which I couldn't. I had to go look it up later.
Yeah. Well, okay. So Ralsei, like as you were describing this, you have the link here. Clearly, like changing the lyrics to make them way more positive, like putting a smiley face on what are otherwise very dark lyrics. So I mean, this idea of Ralsei, like keeping information back, putting a happy face on things, like, man, yeah, you're really making me question what their motivations are. Like, I believe they're fighting for the good of the world, but like, I don't understand what the method is. Like, that's, I think, the question for me. It's like, I don't understand the methodology.
Right. I think what makes me nervous is, because there's this like element of toxic positivity, right? Where it's like, you're just being happy for the sake of being happy because you think it's the right thing to do. And it's like the palatable thing. And I think what makes me nervous is if there is something more challenging or difficult or dark up ahead, and Ralsei does not share it with the team, what does that do to Chris and Susie? Yeah, it's just, I think Ralsei may feel like he's protecting. I think maybe that's the motivation behind not sharing this stuff, because maybe he thinks, oh, if I don't share the bad, maybe it'll protect him from having to deal with some of that, and maybe we can only look at the good stuff, and maybe only the good stuff will happen because I'm not going to acknowledge the bad stuff.
We talked about this in December, I remember, but are Ralsei and Toriel both cows?
I think they're both goats.
Okay, both goats.
I think.
No, this theory won't hold water because Toriel gets captured in this, and you see Ralsei. But I was wondering, like, maybe they're the same person, but no, that can't be. I don't know. Yeah. I have a million theories. This is like, these are the questions that just like so keep me anchored into things like this.
Yes. And I think, because I cannot remember, since I've played both, I'm starting to mix up both chapters. I'm starting to mix up what I learned in 4 versus what I learned in 3. So I'm going to err on the side of waiting to share some of my further theories on this. But I think we'll definitely look back at the song next week for some further theorizing about some characters.
Get your theories in the chat. We want to know what you're thinking, especially like if you remember your theories during chapter 3 or remember your theories during chapter 4, like, use your spoiler tags. We want to know what you guys are hearing and what you're thinking about this stuff.
Yeah. In the Discord thread for sure.
I am so curious. Like, it's just like the characterizations in this game, like how Noelle pops up sometimes, like the way Undyne pops up in this, like the characters are driving so much of the mystery, honestly, more so than like, why are these fountains exploding? Honestly, more than what's going on with Chris's heart. Like, it's the connection between the characters of the light world and like how they show up in the dark world that is like just constantly making me scratch my head and like, what is actually happening here?
Yeah. I feel like really chapter 3 is a great transitional chapter because it's so different from the other two. It brings us back into the world in a really interesting way. We're cooking up more theories because this is a very lore heavy chapter. I would say we have a lot of different and fresh mechanics, so it may feel like heavier on the mechanic side, and it is. But at the same time, I think the lore that we are provided is actually really dense compared to what it may initially feel like. Because when I finished the chapter at first, I was like, oh, we just went through like 3 mini games and we fought a boss fight and that's kind of it. But really, if you dig, there's a lot more there. I
mean, chapter 3 so far, I think has been my favorite chapter. I just really enjoyed it. It was like, I felt the most delight playing it, and it felt like we were really getting into something beneath the surface, especially with this ending with the bunker. So like, what do you think is going on here? Like, what were your theories as you got to the point that like, okay, it seems like we've kind of closed this thing off, but now this bunker has appeared. Like, what were your thoughts on this as you were like experiencing it?
Yeah, well, through the first 3 chapters, we knew that this bunker was a thing. We know that adults have told the kids of the town, don't go around here. This is a thing that we only use in emergencies, like stay away from it. So we already know this is kind of like a suspicious place. I mean, just from a video game perspective, it's like a locked bunker in a town that's otherwise quite quaint and open. It's like, all right. I think what was really interesting is with this bunker, we learned that Chris knows how to open it and isn't willing to share with us that information. It seems like it'll probably be the place where there is another dark fountain, I would guess. And I believe there were 3 symbols on it. So even though Chris knows the clues, we don't. And we see the symbol of, what is it, a pine tree, something related to the cops, I think. And then there were 3 symbols. But basically, one was signified kind of like the holidays. So the mayor, his wife, and like the Des and Noel. One symbol kind of referred to the dreamers in the Dreamer family. I think specifically maybe Asgore, maybe it was a flower. And then the third symbol, I think, seemed like it was related to Undine from my guess. I cannot remember. Do you have the symbols down? I can look them up real quick.
I did not even notice that there were symbols, so no.
But yeah, I think for me, this feels like it's going to be like maybe the penultimate dark fountain that we go to. It feels like a final area of sorts. But yeah, I'm curious what you think.
Well, honestly, you've sent my brain down a whole different path, which is...
Oh, really? Oh, no.
I'm sorry, but like I like you have just raised this question of agency for me. Like, we were talking about Bunker, and I was like, oh, maybe Chris did something, like locked a kid down there, and that's why they know the code or whatever. Like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But like, that made me think like, oh, but like, we would never let them do that. I was like, wait, we would never let them do that. And it's like, now I have this feeling like, which I had not picked up on the fact that we are only, remember, in the beginning of the podcast, I had not picked up on the fact that we are only controlling Chris when their soul or heart is intact. And like, that seems like objectively like a thing you want is for your soul or heart to be intact. But like, what does it mean that they lose all agency when that is happening? Like, what does it mean that like we, the players, are completely taking away any free will or autonomy Chris has?
Right.
And like, Chris very clearly does not always want that heart in place. Like, they're cutting it out of themselves. They're trying to lock it in a cage.
Mm-hmm.
I am like now wondering like how much of a bad guy or villain we, the players, are. Like, sorry, I know this is like not at all connected to the symbols of the bunker, but like, you've like majorly set my head spinning, and I'm like picking up the pieces now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, join me. This is where I've been.
You're like, I've been asking this question for years.
Yeah. No, I also wonder, because, okay, this is way throwback to chapter 1, but when you start the game, you are instructed to create a vessel, and you go through that character creation.
That's right.
Thing. And then your character is discarded, and then you learn that you are Chris. And in my head, I don't know, part of me wonders if we were meant to be that vessel, and for some reason something happened and we are now in Chris, but that wasn't like the original intention, or maybe somehow like Chris was tricked into letting us in. I don't know, because it doesn't feel like Chris is happy to have us here in their body, right? And so I'm wondering if how much Chris knows about us, and if Chris was tricked into letting us be their soul, and if Chris because Chris puts us back in, it's like Chris can pull us out, but Chris puts us back in. So I'm wondering what benefits Chris in having a soul. Do you know what I mean? Like, what benefits Chris in having us around?
Yeah. Like, why is this a good thing? Like,
yeah.
Even if they're making bad choices, like, even if they're responsible for this dark world exploding and these fountains appearing somehow, like, right. At least it's their choice. Like, no one has expressed to us that it's like our job to stop Chris from doing bad things, but it kind of feels like we're doing that by taking away their autonomy. Like, wow, like this is a total, I'm like, you've sent my mind reeling, and this is maybe not how to start wrapping up a podcast, but right. Like, you've given me like 100 new questions that I have to really think about now.
Yeah. Well, and here's the benefit and curse is that this game is not yet done. So it's like, these questions are ones that we probably won't have answers for until
Don't say it.
We get, until chapter 7, I would imagine.
No.
But I do have some more smaller questions because we hadn't talked about like exploring the green room and seeing some of these other characters. I'm curious if, like, I really loved what was it? El Nina and El Nino, the two like weather characters.
Yes.
They added just some lovely like melodrama, romance, heartbreak to everything. And then the reappearance of the infamous rules card.
Rules card
to create
showing
a
up.
throuple was not what I ever expected to see, but it was incredibly funny. I don't know if you enjoyed that part. I think they were one of my favorite comedic moments.
Yes, them and Lancer, as always, like with his random cameos, cracked me up. Okay, so when El Nino El Nina, like, they kind of have a breakup moment in the first mini game, and you see them in the green room, I think, is when you get to give them advice. And essentially, like, the advice is like, you have strength on your own, or like, you should open your heart to love, like, something along those lines.
Yeah.
Do you remember which one you chose?
I think I said no, you can do this on your own. Like you got
I did
this.
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like because it didn't even occur to me that like their relationship dynamic would be significant. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, that was just like a random thing in a minigame. So like, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
And then like this kind of breakup becomes a substantial part of the ongoing like motif in the game. Like, I was wondering if you had done the opposite, just to see like if there was a difference in gameplay for them like reconciling or whatever. But like rules card showing up and like explicitly instigating a throuple, I thought was just like absolutely hilarious.
Yeah,
really
the other
enjoyed
two
that.
did not actually want. It was just great.
So at the end, like as we get to the end of their relationship, like, oh, I thought you liked this guy. I don't like this guy. No, I thought you liked this guy. I don't like this guy. Like that breakup scene, I was rolling. It was great.
It was so funny. I loved those characters. I really loved also how at the end, and again, maybe this is probably definitely me reading into like, workers' rights, but by the end, a lot of the workers, like, they all like quit their job. Like, as you go in, if you choose to pacify them, they all come with you and they all kind of just leave Tenna. And there's a part where they're like standing in line to do, I think it's like payment paperwork, and they're all just so sad. And then you basically like mow down the paper and they all just are like, peace, and they leave. And that was a great moment. I don't know if you did that.
Did I encounter that? I don't remember that at all.
Oh no.
I took so many pages of notes, people. I took so many pages of notes.
I mean, but this wasn't like a story moment. This was more of, as you're exploring the world, you can choose to like interact with the thing in this way, and it just frees up
man.
Yeah, all these characters. I'm curious if you also explored a little bit more during the Zelda mini game, and did you see like any of the islands? Did you try to go to the borders of the area?
When I went north, it said like, this is just going to be a looping animation. There's no reason to go north. And so I turned around. Did you keep going?
Yes.
Oh,
of course.
man.
You never listen to what the game tells you to do.
I thought they were just like cutting me some slack and being like, hey, dude, like, for real, don't do this. I should have known. No, tell me all about it.
So I haven't finished this yet because I'm actually in the middle of my second replay now, and I'm going to be doing this. So I'll report back next week with more details. But there is sort of like a Arctic area up top. And I had a friend who mentioned it to me and gave me a little hint that it refers kind of back to Noelle and like the weird root found in Chapter 2. It refers back to some of that. And I'm very curious what happens because I have not done that on either of my save files. And so we'll see if it does the same thing. But there's like an Arctic area that you can explore up top. I think if you go all the way to the east and maybe down like one or two screens, there's an island, and that's where I talked to Tenna as Chris, where Tenna was kind of like Chris, I did what you said. Come on, man. So that was kind of an interesting moment. And I do know that there is a secret boss that I'm going to be trying to do on this playthrough that I'm currently on. I don't do the secret bosses on my first playthroughs because they're too hard. So yeah, trying to do Chapter 3's secret boss. So hopefully by next week I'll be able to report back with secret boss lore as well.
Is the secret boss in the Zelda game, or is it somewhere else in the Dark World?
I don't think it's in the Zelda game.
Okay.
I think it's somewhere else in the Dark World, but I need to just bring up the guide and just like follow it to see.
Got it. Oh, wait. I just remembered the shredding of the contracts and letting all the workers go. Yes. And like, what's interesting? I remember in the first 2 chapters, the importance of like converting the baddies that you fight and like how they show up. I thought the way that they show up after they've been like converted or shown mercy or whatever in this chapter was way more story important than in the previous ones. Like the confrontation with Tenna, like everyone leaving Tenna and like him realizing that he doesn't have support from these people anymore. Like it just felt way more important to the character and the story. So I don't know, like to me, it just kind of shows like how that motif is developing and becoming more important as we move through.
Yeah, I am really curious because I feel like I am sort of doing a mercy run. I'm saving every creature that we run into. I'm really interested to see what happens because at this point in time, I do feel like I have been collecting them all for the sake of collecting them all, and I don't know what we're going to do with them later, other than it's cool to see them when we go back to Castletown in the moments that we do. But yeah, I'm very curious to see what happens narratively because it feels like we spent so much time doing it. If you do choose to do it, that there's got to be some sort of payoff, right?
I mean, I would assume so.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I would hope so. So yeah, I guess final thoughts on Chapter 3. I think overall we get a feeling of how you feel, but just if you had to summarize your time with it.
Overall, really positive. Like, would recommend, especially if you're like into the mysteries that chapters 1 and 2 present. I think it's absolutely worth your time. For me, it was the perfect length of game. I thought the pacing was really good. I liked having new mini game experiences, and I am just like, man, especially now that you've raised some of these questions to me about Chris and the soul, like I'm kind of rethinking this whole narrative from the ground up. So that's fun. How about you? What are your kind of like big summary thoughts?
Well, at first I wasn't sure how I felt about it. I think by the end of playing the chapter and revisiting it and like talking through it, I think I really love what this has done for Deltarune. I think it's a nice refresher, just for all the reasons you mentioned, but I think also it's taught me to not necessarily expect the same formula, that Toby Fox and friends are willing to change things up in ways that we may not expect, and that's very exciting to me. It's nice to know that we may be getting some like curveballs, in like moments where we are going to be unfamiliar with what's going on, and I think that's really cool. It's kind of risky, honestly. It's like a little bit of a risk that he took, and that the team took in making the chapter like this. And yeah, I think it paid off.
There are some interesting risks, and like what I will say, this is not a spoiler for chapter 4, but it is kind of a content warning. There's a bit of a like religious or church-based jump scare, at least for me, at the onset of chapter 4.
Yeah.
So just, be aware of that. Like, it took me so by surprise. So to your point about like, they are willing to really take some risks here and do some pretty unorthodox things based on the game for the first 2 chapters, really based on gaming in general. Like, I just feel like it's really making you question like how you engage with the media. So yeah, I don't know. I appreciate them trying out some new things, and I'm eager to talk about chapter 4 with y'all.
Yeah. All right. So for closing time, we do have a bit of housekeeping and a bit of news. I guess, Joel, did you want to share this since it's your news?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Well, I got a transfer at my current job over to London. So I am moving. at the beginning of September, which means just kind of due to time zone things and everything, August is going to be my last month as a host of the Geeks and Gowns podcast. I'll still be listening along, probably more active in the community, actually, after the move. But I just wanted to express a sincere amount of gratitude for you, Jenny, for letting me be a part of this and creating such an awesome space for us to talk about games. This is one of my favorite 2 hours or so of my week. And the games I've gotten to play, getting to know all of you in the community has been really, really special for me. So I'm super excited for this move. It's something that it's kind of just fell into my lap, and I've always said if something like this fell in my lap, I would take it. So I'm thrilled, nervous, excited, anxious. But yeah, so the last August was my last full month as a full-time host here, and just wanted to say thanks to you and the community for making this such a special time for me.
Yeah, and anytime you'll be welcome back. But yeah, we still got 2 months with you, so that's great, right? Yeah, 2 months, 2 full months. Well, July, August, a month and a half, we'll say.
A month and a half, yeah.
And so for folks who may be wondering, we will have a slightly revamped format starting in September, likely moving to a bi-weekly format, so every other week to fit, and I will have more news on that later. I'm really excited, really sad about the change because, of course, we want Joel to be here always, but I'm excited because this is offering up some really cool opportunities for other folks to come in and chat with the community and have it be it's just kind of a wider cafe space, which is really exciting.
Widen the cafe, open the doors.
Open the doors, bring more folks in. And speaking of bringing more folks into the conversation, I'm really excited because next week, Josh Boykin of IntelliGame will be back to finish out our conversation of chapters 3 and 4 with Deltarune. So we will be enjoying a 3-person host, I guess, of the podcast next week. And then I'll re-share this again and again because I know schedule changes can be kind of wonky, but we'll, after next week, move to a bi-weekly format, which I'm pretty sure bi-weekly is every other week, right?
Not bi-weekly, twice. Fortnightly,
Yeah, fortnightly, whichever. Fortnightly feels like further for some reason, so I'm going to say bi-weekly. But for the remainder, at least of this year, until I can kind of sort things out a little bit, we're going to move to a bi-weekly format, and I will share more news about that next week.
Well, next week, Chapter 4, make sure you give it some time and love and attention. Any other big announcements before we wrap it up?
I don't think so. Yeah, be ready for Chapter 4 next week. It'll drop on the 22nd. And we'll be off then on the 29th and back on the 5th with I Was a Teenage Exocolonist. So that was actually community choice. So if you wanted to start on I Was a Teenage Exocolonist, you can go ahead and get on that right now.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for welcoming me to this community. And as a sign off for this week, just because one of your friends says that they're imaginary and not real doesn't mean that you can't still be best friends with them or have a crush on them or want to fight bad guys with them. I think you should absolutely do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Bye.
Bye.